Have you future-proofed your way of thinking? Have you made sure that you have the most broad, the healthiest, the most complete and solid perspective of life and yourself that you can possibly have? If you're not 100% certain that you have done this, join me. Let's dive into it. I'm Cody, founder of Yourself Unlimited, where I help you achieve the highest level of happiness possible by taking back full control over your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Now in today's video, what we're covering is future proofing. We're gonna cover what it is, how to use this in your life, and thirdly, if you stick around to the end, I'm gonna include a nice exercise that will really ground you into the idea of what it means to do this every single day of your life and how it can make you have the broadest perspective possible to achieve the highest level of happiness available to us. Let's dive into it. Now, what do I mean by future proofing? Put very simply, it's you broadening your perspective to look at yourself and humanity and society and the universe through the lens of different time periods, the perspective that humans have had throughout different time periods of existence. So for instance, it means looking at yourself and looking at your problems and looking at society's problems and looking at the way that you interact with people from the mindset of both somebody in the future, somebody right now in the present time, and somebody in the past. So looking at your issues, your problems, your state of being, who you are every day, from the perspective and the eyes of somebody who is from a tribe from Papua New Guinea or, on the plains of Africa, somebody that had an entirely different lifestyle, completely opposite of how the modern lifestyle is. If you look at all of your issues and situations through a perspective of somebody from that time, and vice versa. If you go ahead and try and imagine what it will be like and what the perspectives of life and yourself and humanity will be 2,000 years from now, and look at how time evolves and how silly concepts that we embrace right now will look to people 2,000 years in the future, how they'll look back and say, why were they so stressed out over X and Y? Because that was so stupid. Whereas right now, it means a lot to us now. Looking at and bringing these things into your perspective broadens your sense of self. It broadens and embraces your sense of being able to take back full control over who you are. Say that something modern day right now is getting to you, causing you anxiety. Understanding it from different perspectives of, humanity's thinking will broaden your sense of how meaningless and made up it might be. So it really allows you to escape the needle point mindset that we all grow up understanding. Because if you only ever stay in this one rigid, pinpoint way of thinking, you're missing the entire more broad way of seeing everything. So looking at things from a much more wide and broad perspective of different time points in history allows you and provides you the ability to look past and look beyond all of the modern day issues that cause us to be less happy every single day of our lives. So that's my idea of future proofing. I call it future proofing because if you develop your perspective of life based on every different segment of humanity's history, and most importantly, where you think we're going, how you think people will think in the future, then in the future, because you're already technically, you're trying your best to think and understand life from that perspective of the people in our future that we will become. It's technically future proofing because your way of thinking is so broad it can't really get outdated. It'll become a little outdated depending on what different way humanity will shift in its development, but you've already taken that into consideration, so you're trying your best to future proof it. So that's where the concept comes from. So how can we use this concept of future proofing to be the most developed version of ourselves right now? So the way I like to go about this is looking at anything that, keeps you from being extremely happy in the moment, anything that causes you anxiety, anything that, might have caused you to be slightly depressed in the past, looking and understanding the concept of future proofing and understanding that most of the reasons that you are depressed or have anxiety is because you're thinking in the logic, you're thinking in the concepts, the conceptual framework that we've all been taught to think in modern day. And understanding that there's different ways of thinking way beyond what we've been taught just in this very small sliver of history, of humanity's history. Broadening your perspective to different slices and different viewpoints beyond modern day allows you to know that most things that you go ahead and get triggered by or get upset over or keep you from being happy are all just products of modern day, and B, understanding that those are all just imagined crazy concepts that are part of our modern day world. So, for instance, body images. Your conceptualization of what beauty is, what the beauty standard is, and whether you should be a certain way is all just a product of today's modern society, just our way of thinking. If you look at any other society at any point, any different time point in history, they all had different ideas. So it goes to show how etheric, how ephemeral, how unrealistic it is to keep your mindset based on just the modern time period that you're a part of. This is why looking at yourself and looking at the ideas within you from a much more broad perspective of different time points in history allows you the ability to remain more happy in the moment. Because if you realize that a certain topic, a certain subject is divesting you of your right now, here, now happiness, understanding it from a different perspective will clear out the illusion of whatever it is that's causing the stress and anxiety within you. Boom, you're right back to at least attempting to be closer to being happy. You can see through the illusion of the thing that's causing you to be not happy right now. So that's my take on how I use it. So bottom line is looking at whatever it is that's causing you anxiety or divesting you of your happiness right now through the lens, through the perspective of different time points in history, say from a caveman 20,000 years ago, or from a tribe member 2,000 years ago, or from a human in the future 2,000 years from now. Looking at whatever it is that's causing you anxiety or just robbed you of being in full control over your happiness in the moment, understanding it from those different perspectives allows you to see through how made up whatever your situation is that you're getting stressed over. Things are only a certain way because we in the modern day standpoint and time period agree that things have to be a certain way. So this gives you an out. This gives you a one-up on whatever the situation is to understand, hey, look, it's not that serious. It's only as serious as we imagine it to be in our modern day, points of view that we all construct together. So this is how I use it every day, is I look at whatever the situation is that's causing me anxiety from the perspective of somebody 5,000 years ago. And if it didn't mean anything to them, because they have no idea what, messing up an Excel spreadsheet is, and that wouldn't have caused them any unhappiness, I'm not really gonna let it cause me any unhappiness, because it's a little bit crazy to let something so imaginary, such as an Excel spreadsheet, divest you of your own happiness right now. You can always learn, you can always grow, you can always learn how to do something another way and correct the issue that caused you to get yelled at. I'm not saying don't do that. That's, a positive experience. That's you making the best of a negative experience. But allowing it to take your happiness from you is what I see as a problem. Is what I see as, counter you being the happiest person that you can be. So looking at your issues from the standpoint of somebody 5,000 years ago, or vice versa, looking at your issues from the standpoint of somebody 2,000 years in the future, where they look back and think about how ridiculous it was, this whole system that we have going right now in the modern day, and these crazy ideas that we have imagined of things have to be a certain way. Looking at it from either the past or the future really gives you a perspective and a one-up to be able to take back full control over your emotions and your thoughts in the moment, leading you to at least be able to take a deep breath and be much more happy in that moment of, right after getting ringed out by your boss or something like that. So that's how I use it every day. Now let's look at a exercise that I formulated just for you to go through and have an idea as far as, how to solidify this within yourself. This exercise is really simple. I'm going to put up some videos so that you're not watching me just talk the whole time, but I really want you to imagine how developed society has become since our hunter-gatherer days, and how all of these made-up ideas throughout civilization, all of our perspectives, has developed into much more and more complex ways of thinking that lead us to be much less happy than we might have been as our ancestors in a much more natural environment. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now. I'm just going to sort of read through a quick example of something that you can flesh out a little bit more on your own, or if you guys want, I can go ahead and make a more fleshed out, maybe, meditative version of this. Let me know in the comments. But let's go ahead and let's do it. I want you to imagine yourself as a human walking the plains of Africa. You have a small herd of family and friends that you all make a living with together, no more than 150, gathering food and hunting. Now, while you all spend your time together, there's never too much strife, there's never too much struggle. Food is there to be had. It is a little bit of work, but you go ahead, you get the work done. You go out, you pick the food that you need. At night, you all rest, you all laugh around the campfire. You all enjoy the time that you have outside of the time that you spent gathering the food. So there is fun to be had. Happiness is abundant. Now I want you to imagine the world getting a little bit more complex. Say we jump ahead to the Roman times. Now there are much more societal rules and regulations that we need to conform to in order to feel respect, in order to get the love from our parents, in order to be accepted by our peers. And these different levels of societal concepts and conventions start to cause you a little bit of unease, because if you break away from anything that's normal, you're now ostracized. You can now face the possibility of death by being thrown out of society by just believing and living the way you want by your own terms. So life gets a little bit more dangerous if you want to be happy all the time. So now let's jump into the time period of the Industrial Revolution. Think about the complexity that develops in the human mindset. We went from just every day trying to find food to eat and enjoying the time that we had other than the time that we spent gathering food. So the rest of the time was spent with family, with friends, your loved ones. And this really made you feel whole and complete. Now, in modern society, in the Industrial Revolutionary times, it got much more complex. There's much more ideas, and your way of life has changed significantly. You're now spending much more time, say, as a factory worker, away from your friends. In fact, to the point in which most of the time that you spend is away from your family, is away from your friends. Sure, there may still be fun to be had with your coworkers, but it's much more torturous than it was back in the previous time period of history. So now let's move to today, where all of these imagined ideas from, when we were walking the plains, gathering food, all the way up until the Roman times, where we now had this vast array of concepts that we have to believe in to fit in, to be able to be happy. Now there's even much more vast rules and regulations of you can't put your elbow on the table without getting slapped by your father. There's much more negativity, there's much more harassment going on as far as not allowing other people to think and feel the way they want to feel. So happiness is much harder to come by. All of these ideas are real and concrete unto the experience, but when you look at it from the perspective of somebody 5,000 years ago, it's all a totally illusionary, it's all completely made up, it's all literally just in your imagination. So looking at your modern day life from the perspective of previous generations or future generations can really put perspective into you to build the most strong and core foundational understanding of yourself and society, to look through a lot of the illusions of the things that cause us unhappiness and dis-at-ease is one of the most prevalent and profound things that I've experienced within my life. So you can go ahead and make your own version of this exercise. This was me just sort of spitballing the concept. You can flush it out, really develop a profound understanding as to what it was like to live in another time period, and imagine the perspective of life that they would have had to see through the illusions of the things that cause you stress every day, and look at how made up it all is. We just, things only in the modern day perspective have as much credence over you, have as much power over your emotions as we all collectively believe they do. You can break away from that collective. You can decide that things that would not have mattered to somebody 5,000 years ago aren't going to rob you of your happiness today just because other people imagine that these things mean a lot to them, so they have to mean a lot to you. So looking at things from other points of view from history can give you a profound understanding as to what life is like and can be like for yourself. So I appreciate you staying by. I appreciate you looking at these perspectives, because I feel like these are some of the most healthy perspectives somebody can possibly attain. And if you want more, or if you're looking for more information on this, go ahead and drop a comment. You can email me personally at yourselfunlimited.com. You can contact me however you wish. And thank you so much for staying with me, and have a good one. That divest us of our happiness are things that go ahead, that divest us, oh my God, that divest us of our happiness